Good morning, Njaimeh. How are you doing today? I'm just going to start it off with
I'm good.
interrogation.
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Could you introduce yourself and just tell us first a little bit about yourself, and then we'll move into talking about the installation a little bit.
My name is Njaimeh Njie. I am a photographer, filmmaker, and multimedia producer. I'm from Pittsburgh, born and raised. Went away like many people do. I went to college and taught high school English in St. Louis before coming back to start in a career in media and art.
Great. Thank you. So you're part of our Making Home Here installation or exhibition. Could you tell us the name of your installation and a little bit about it before we start talking more?
Sure. Let me think about exactly what I want to say. It's like there's a few different facets to it, so I'm always like way on the fence about what I want to draw attention to. The name of my installation is Did You Get Everything? And it really is based in memory and family and thinking about what it means to make home and who you might find in a home. The kind of guiding question that I was going into this with was, what would it look like or what would it feel like to walk into a memory? And so I wanted to think about how to build out a space that would be reminiscent of the homes that I've known, and kind of the ways that I've felt comfortable and cared for at home. But the flip side of that is thinking about, as a Black Pittsburgher, as a Black American, as a Black global citizen, really, the precarity of home and how, a physical home isn't necessarily a permanent place. And so in the installation, this family is leaving home. We don't know why exactly, but I wanted to think about, for the many reasons that people may choose to or have to leave their homes, what will they take with them in terms of, yes, their things, but also in terms of their memories.
And it's beautiful. The installation has so many different components in terms of the audio, the actual physical space. Could you talk a little bit more about the audio clips that we're hearing in the space and where you drew them from and how that relates to what you're saying?
Yeah, so give it a beat. The audio in the installation comes from my family. So over the course of the past few years, I've started doing these like audio recordings at different family gatherings. Obviously, with the pandemic, that got interrupted, but I don't know. I guess the stars aligned. But the gathering that we had, the last gathering we had right before the pandemic, I rolled the recorder, asked everyone to go around. It was New Year's 2020, I believe. Asked everyone to go around and just talk about their year, what they were grateful for. And that, kind of evolved into people talking about, home, growing up, as we often do in my family. But that particular conversation, there are snippets from my family, like my mom and her sisters talking about growing up in Homestead, which is the steel town right outside of Pittsburgh that they're from. And then the most recent gathering that we had, I rolled the tape again, and asked everyone to go around and talk about what the kitchen table means to them. That one I had this installation in mind, but there are snippets of everyone just saying, what that space means to all of us.
I love that. And there are also the images on the screens. Are they taken from your family or from another source material?
Yeah, so the images that are projected, they're collaged. They're from really different magazines that I found. I was interested in kind of capturing postures and relationships through like body positioning to create a sense of like a conversation, to create a sense of like an interaction happening between these people that, we as visitors might be able to pick up on and it would feel familiar. So a combination of that, as well as positioning them in different spaces around the room, that would evoke the feeling of like a living space, and then evoke the feeling of like a kitchen. Yeah.
I love that you've taken the faces out. Was there a particular reason or rationale for doing that?
Yeah. So in my work, I'm a photographer. That's kind of like the foundation of what I do. I definitely started out making portraits, but have slowly kind of gone away from that, and gotten more interested in like landscapes and how we tell stories about people without necessarily having people in the frame. In some of the other collage work that I've done, I've obscured the faces. I've used cameras, I've used bouquets of flowers, I've used, wide shots so that, people are in profile so that we're not seeing their faces, only because I'm not so interested in like the specific facial features and people being able to connect to that. I'm more so interested in like the essence of a person. And so that's why you see the different colors, the different textures. It's kind of like, what are some other ways that we can bring in these, this aesthetic or this feeling that is reminiscent of home without necessarily being attached to someone's physical characteristics. But it is important to me to acknowledge that like these are like Black folks. This is a Black home, as a Black artist and someone making this work.
I think it's beautiful. So I want to go back to the idea of like walking into a memory. Mm-hmm. Like I love that idea of somebody walking into a memory, and it's very specific to you as a person, but how do you expect or what would you like to see the visitor experience as they walk into that memory?
I think that honestly, any way that someone engages with it is probably cool. One way to engage is the audio. Probably depending on who you're with or even maybe what time of day you come, it might be a little bit more obscured than other times. But even if you can't hear the specific like words and like conversation, I hope that it feels familiar to like be in a space where, you're tuned into one conversation, but then you kind of hear like the laughter or another conversation in another room pipes up a little bit. So just kind of that flow of audio in a home. In terms of the visuals, I hope people, again, feel like it's immersive in a way that feels reminiscent of walking into a function and, kind of seeing all these different things going on. And maybe even, the way that different spaces take on different characteristics. Like I know in our family, the living room, the dining room tends to be a little more, not formal, because obviously we're family and we're comfortable with each other, but the conversations are a little more measured. They're a little bit more, I guess there is a formality, but then the kitchen is kind of like, anything goes. It's a lot more active. It's a little bit more bubbly, or maybe just in a different way. So yeah, just thinking about how those placements of the figures and the audio might activate those memories for people in different ways.
Did the space of 1414 help shape this installation in any way, like different from when you came into it, for example, the idea?
Totally. So the space here at 1414 definitely was a guiding light in building out the installation. So actually the nexus for this whole project was I was doing a residency at Chatham in their immersive media department. So the goal there was to create a virtual reality experience with a headset. And so I'd started doing a lot of the like thinking, the research, the brainstorming around how to create like this memory or like how to create an immersive environment for a user to experience that had a little bit of a narrative quality, but also was using, the perks of that medium to recreate a home. The pandemic kind of ended that, stopped that dead in its tracks, but I very much appreciate, the work that we did do. The folks over there, Doug and Hunter, were like incredibly generous with their time and energy. But coming into this space, like an actual physical space, this is very site specific. So just seeing the two rooms, the sizes of the rooms, like how they complement each other, the flow of one room to the next, really had me thinking about, okay, how can I create like a wider area and use the spaces to think about different aspects of a home.
I think it's so interesting too. Can I ask another question about the process like of this particular exhibition? We had a lot of group meetings and discussions, and did that influence at all the process for your work too?
Yeah, I think so. So in preparing for this show, our group meetings and discussions were very helpful to me to hear about how the other artists were thinking about home, how you and Sean were thinking about home. And also, you all encouraging us and kind of like nudging us to like push our practices a little bit. I typically I have done installation work, but it's been on like a 2D surface. It's some have had like spatial elements, but this was a jump for me to like build out an entire room/2. So yeah, I mean, I think just being able to articulate some ideas, being able to brainstorm and have them land in a safe space and have other people say like, oh yeah, like that feels familiar, that resonates with me. That was kind of an indicator of, which directions to pursue, which ones to maybe fall back from. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, we definitely had those conversations too, where a lot of people would lock into certain points of your installation or everybody's installations and feel like that's familiar. Yes, that resonates. So this is kind of the first installation. Where do you think you'll take this from here to the next point? Will anything move you? Are you going to take anything with you in your practice from this experience into the next stage?
Yes.
Way off the heavy hitters. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's kind of impossible not to take, things with me from this installation into the rest of my practice or what I might do in the future. I mean, I learned a ton from the Mattress Factory staff, the installers, Danny, Josh. I think doing this particular piece challenged me in a lot of ways in terms of like critical thinking, but also thinking about a space and like what makes a space what it is. And so I found myself thinking on multiple planes in a way that I do in my work generally. But typically I'm thinking about, okay, how to string a narrative together from point A to point B. This was, okay, how to, all good. This was more so how to like build something out and make it feel like something that anyone can walk in and be a part of.
It definitely feels like a three-dimensional memory. Like you walk in and is there a particular part that's your favorite part?
I mean, I like the kitchen a lot. So that whole kitchen setup is literally, that's my family. And it was kind of validating because when my mom walked into the installation and she like heard herself, she's like the main voice in there. And, she heard what they were talking about. She was like, and she saw the table. So we had a lot of conversations about these Formica tables. And she's like, yeah, we had that at, our house on 14th. But then when we moved, to 11th, we got a different table. So I think the biggest payoff for me was that she like took a beat and she was like, yeah, this is us.
This is amazing. Yeah. That's
yeah.
Beautiful. So the title is Did You Get Everything? Mm-hmm. Where did the title come from, or what does that mean in relationship to the installation?
Okay, so finding a title for this was challenging. It took a while, but so Did You Get Everything is something that I know I've said and I've heard a million times. Like leaving the house, it's like in a day-to-day sense. Did you get everything means did you get your purse? Do you have your money? Did you get your homework? As you're leaving, it's kind of that last thing that you say. To make sure you have everything. But then I started thinking about it in a broader sense. So, if a family is leaving for good, did you get everything can take on the meaning of, are all the boxes packed? Is everything shipped? Do we have everything that we're taking with us? Also within that, the memory aspect. So no one is probably ever going to ask you, did you get all of your memories? Like, that's not a quantifiable thing, but it's kind of something that's in the back of your mind, maybe. So I even think of it in the sense of like, going to college or, leaving home for an extended amount of time, and you take that last look back, and it's kind of like what sticks with you, what's burned into your memory from that glance. But then on another level, I think the question changes based on who it's being asked to. So, I'm thinking about displacement, I'm thinking about gentrification. And so it's a little bit of a critique. So if the question is posed, to the new family who's moved into a space, right? Someone who has displaced another family, did you get everything, can mean like, was this worth it? Like, did you get everything you wanted by, participating in this system that has pushed people out? I think the same question could be posed to, a developer. Did you get was it worth it? Buying the block or disenfranchising a neighborhood, did you get everything that you wanted out of this deal? So I think it can work on multiple levels, but hopefully it kind of plants a seed of how people can think about the installation.
That's beautiful. So we're asking all the artists to, it's kind of a question, we were talking about home. So how do you make home? Or what is home for you, especially as a Pittsburgher who's gone and come back?
Mm-hmm. Home is, the most basic answer for me is family, just because my family is very close and I grew up in rooms like that. Like, that's my house, basically. Home is food. It's laughter, it's jokes, it's stories. That's probably a big one, if not the biggest one. Anywhere where you can like sit down together and have conversation and trade stories. To me, that's it. So maybe that is, my house. Maybe that is, my classmate's house. Maybe that's who knows where, but I think those are like the bones of it. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Is there anything else that you want to add that I haven't asked?
I totally forgot to say. So in terms of the like actual build out of the installation, the walls play a big part in it. So in each room, there's one wallpapered wall, and then the rest of the walls are white. So that's meant to be reminiscent of kind of a whitewashing or kind of an erasure. So thinking about whoever this family is or any family is who's leaving, there's this one wall that kind of holds their story, but the rest of it has been scrubbed out. And so the installation is that kind of like last holdout. It's ephemeral though, right? It's a projection. You can see through it. It's not a tangible thing. So this is an imagined space, in contrast to this one like last bit of like physicality that this family has left in the space.
That's beautiful.
Thanks.
I think I don't have any other questions, so you have questions for us?
I was like, I'm good. I don't think so. But no, thank you for curating and for all of the kind of like steps along the way.
Oh my gosh, it just like when you speak, it's so familiar in so many ways, and so I'm so grateful to be in the presence of like you, and it really is.
Thanks.
And it's been a generous. Everybody's been generous.
Yeah.
And I think that generosity for me has been unbelievable. Both the Mattress Factory staff, but also the generosity of thinking and feeling like that. I think has been great.
Yeah, it's been a really positive experience.
I'm glad. Yeah, me too. I could sit in your memory for for a day, which was, I'm so excited that your mom felt that way.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. She actually came through with one of her best friends. Well, she came through twice. We came up once together, and then, you know, when her friends started talking about like all the things that she saw, she was like, "Oh yeah, that is true." She's like, you know, so it was cool.
It's so interesting that by chance it was the beginning of the pandemic and the end of, or whatever, not the end, but the regathering.
Mm-hmm.
So how are you? What's happening now? Like, are you recording now, or how has that affected family relationships in terms of?
Well, I mean, I can't even. I'm not the original. Like,
Right.
my mom and my sister. My mom is like the family documentarian, and my sister is like the family genealogist.
Oh,
so those two have the bases covered. I kind of came in on their coattails, but my mom, you know, one of my earliest memories is going to South Carolina with my mom and my two aunts to visit our family down there, and my mom literally having her tape recorder and recording our Uncle Clark. So, you know, those are really cherished tapes. It's family history. It's, you know, I mean, she did it. Like, that was the model. And so, yeah, when I can, I like to record. Actually, this summer, I went on a ride along with my mom and my aunt, her younger sister, through Homestead, through their hometown, and just rolled it for like 3 hours. And so they're like pointing out, you know, this was here, this was there. And the conversation was amazing. So I think that will become my version of like the Uncle Clark. So yeah, South Carolina tapes.
That's amazing. Actually, that is the treasured possession of a family. I mean, that is.
Yeah.
So, what was? Well, now I'm going off. I just want to have a conversation with her. So we don't have to take this too long, but I'm just also just interested. So when you went away and came back, like, how did that affect kind of your seeing Pittsburgh in a different way? I'm just really.
That's a whole other.
I just want to talk to you.
You know, honestly, I think the best thing I could say is I'm still working through, maybe I'll always be working through my relationship to Pittsburgh. It's the history. I'm specifically thinking about, when I say history, like of Black Pittsburgh, it's so rich. It's so deep. Like, I don't think you can, and I'm not the first person to say this, but I believe it wholeheartedly. I don't think you can talk about like Black America or really like a Black experience globally without coming through Pittsburgh. It's just the contributions to the culture and to like the way that we live and the markers that we use to kind of like benchmark our lives. So many of them have come through here. But I mean, just the ways that we've been treated here, like many places, but it feels very acute here in Pittsburgh. And so I think in my work, I'm trying to explore that. I'm trying to hold space for, you know, the bitter and the sweet, but always, I hope it feels like I'm privileging and really shining a light on the human experience and like the agency that we have as Black folks and the ways that we've made our lives and loved each other and cared for one another. Granted, it's not all rosy either, but like just the nuance of that experience within these larger systems of oppression.
So can I ask you, like, if you want, how can we hold space, like using your installation, how do you hope a visitor will take that into their lives as they move away, move out of the space?
Excuse me. I hope that anyone who comes through this installation and then goes out into the city can look at it maybe with a fresh set of eyes and just know that, you know, these spaces that a lot of people move into, these spaces that might be sitting empty right now, like there's stories there. Like people live their lives here, and it's not enough to just look at them as almost like something to consume, you know, or something to flip or make something new out of. I think we need to really be cognizant of what has transpired so that, I mean, it sounds cheesy, but it's real, so that we don't keep making the same mistakes.